The story you're about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts about historical characters, events, or locations. Please sit back and listen as I narrate this story to you. Derek and Maria Broaddus were overjoyed to move into their dream home at 657 Boulevard in the affluent town of Westfield, New Jersey. However, just as the couple was about to move into their $1.3 million home with their 3 children, they received a disturbing note in the mail. The letter was signed only "The Watcher," and there was no return address. But whoever wrote it seemed to be keeping a close eye on the Broadduses. Even more disturbing, the Watcher mentioned the Broadduses' 3 children and inquired as to whether there were any more on the way. And, in the weeks that followed, these strange messages from the Watcher became increasingly threatening until the Broadduses backed out of the move entirely. Who is this so-called Westfield Watcher? While Derek Broaddus believes that the unsettling letters were sent by an insane and dangerous neighbor, others believe that the Broadduses may have created the Watcher themselves. The Broadduses were a typical suburban family before purchasing what is now known as the Watcher House in 2014. Maria Broaddus grew up in Westfield, New Jersey, just a few blocks from the 657 Boulevard house. Westfield, about 45 minutes from New York City, is a sleepy suburb where the biggest gossip before the Watcher arrived was the collapse of a local Trader Joe's roof. Residents saw Westfield as a real-life Mayberry, the fictional small town featured in the Andy Griffith Show. In 2014, it was named one of the top 30 safest communities in America by a website, and as of 2019, it had a median household income of $159,923. However, the affluent suburb has been the site of other atrocities in the past. A man named John List murdered his wife, mother, and 3 children in their Westfield home in 1970. But that heinous crime had long since faded from memory, and most Westfield residents felt safe in their neighborhood. After Derek celebrated his 40th birthday in June 2014, the couple closed on the 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard and began making renovations so that they could move in with their 5, 8, and 10-year-old children. The Watcher letters then began. On a June evening, the first letter arrived at the Watcher's house. Derek Broaddus had been painting a few walls in his family's new home when he received a white card-sized envelope addressed in thick handwriting to the new owner. The typed letter began with warm words of welcome, but quickly devolved into strange and threatening passages describing how the author had been watching the house for decades. They claimed that their father and grandfather had also kept an eye on the house at 657 Boulevard, which was built in 1905. It was the most opulent house on the block, and when the Woodses put it on the market, they received multiple offers that were higher than their asking price. As a result, the Broadduses initially suspected that the Watcher was someone who was upset about losing the house. However, the Woodses stated that one interested buyer had backed out due to a bad medical diagnosis, and another had already found another home. "Do you know the history of the house?" the Watcher wrote. "Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." The letter also said, "I asked the Woods to bring me young blood and it looks like they listened," referring to the house's previous owners. The letter asked the children's names, saying, "Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." Uneasy, Derek Broaddus called the Westfield Police Department, who advised him to move any construction equipment outside in case the Watcher became emboldened enough to throw it through one of the house's windows. The police also advised Broaddus not to speak to any of his neighbors for the time being, as they were all suspects. Following that, the Broadduses contacted the Woods family, who had sold them the house. Andrea Woods confirmed receiving a strange note signed the Watcher a few days before she moved out. The letter was odd, she said, and made similar mention of the Watcher's family observing the house over time. But Andrea and her husband had never received anything like it in their 23 years in the house and had thrown it away without much thought. The Woodses accompanied Maria to the police station that day, where Detective Leonard Lugo told her not to tell anyone about the letters, including her new neighbors, the majority of whom she had never met, and all of whom were now suspects. Derek and Maria Broaddus, on the other hand, couldn't get rid of the feeling that they were being watched. The Broadduses were on high alert for the next few weeks. Derek canceled a business trip, and whenever Maria drove the kids to their new home, she yelled their names if they wandered into a corner of the yard. When Derek was showing a couple on the block around the renovation, the wife said it will be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood. Derek froze. The general contractor for the Broadduses arrived one morning to find a large sign he'd hammered into the front yard had been ripped out overnight. 2 weeks after the letter arrived, Maria stopped by the house to look at some paint samples and check the mail. She recognized the thick black lettering on a card-shaped envelope and called the police. "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard," the watcher wrote. "The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will." The watcher addressed Derek and Maria directly this time, misspelling their names as Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus. Was the watcher close enough to hear one of the Broadduses contractors speak to them? The watcher boasted that he had learned a lot about the family in the previous weeks, particularly about their children. The letter identified the Broadduses' 3 children by birth order and nicknames, the same ones Maria had been yelling. "I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me," it said. "You certainly say their names often." The letter asked about one child in particular whom the writer had seen using an easel inside an enclosed porch. "Is she the artist in the family?" Derek and Maria became nervous and tense around all of their new neighbors, whom they perceived as potential stalkers. They halted their renovations and stopped bringing their children to the house. A third letter arrived a couple of weeks later. "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." The Broadduses, deeply troubled by the letters, continued to contact Westfield police. Detective Lugo, the lead investigator, initially suspected his next-door neighbor, Michael Langford, who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. The DNA found on one of the envelopes, however, indicated that a woman had sealed them with her saliva, and the sample did not match anyone in the Langford home. Furthermore, Michael Langford denied any involvement and his family supported him, claiming that he would never write such threatening notes. Dissatisfied, the Broadduses launched their own investigation. Derek became particularly engrossed. He installed webcams in 657 Boulevard and spent nights crouched in the dark, checking to see if anyone was watching the house from a close distance. Desperate for answers, the Broadduses enlisted the help of a slew of experts to conduct an investigation. Derek contacted the real-life FBI agent who inspired the character of Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs, with whom he served on a school board. The Broadduses also enlisted the help of former FBI agent Robert Lenihan to conduct a threat assessment on the letters. Based on the writer's vocabulary and habit of double spacing after a period, his analysis revealed that he was most likely an older person. Lenihan concluded that while the letter writer did not appear overtly threatening, their clearly erratic thoughts could indicate unpredictability. He also suggested researching former housekeepers or their descendants. Perhaps the watcher was envious of the Broadduses' ability to purchase a home that the writer couldn't afford. They also hired the security firm Kroll to search for handwriting matches to the envelopes, but no such matches were found. Still determined to find answers, the family hired Robert Leonard, a forensic linguist and former member of the band Sha Na Na, to scour local forums for language patterns resembling the mysterious watcher's notes. But all of these efforts were futile. The Broadduses had no answers despite assembling an incredible investigative team. At the end of the day, it came down to, "What are you willing to risk?" Maria Broaddus said. "We weren't going to put our kids in harm's way." 6 months after the first letter arrived, Derek and Maria put the house on the market, asking a little more than they had paid because they expected their renovations to increase the value. However, after disclosing the strange watcher's letters to potential buyers, all offers were withdrawn. Later that year, the Broadduses sued the Woods family for failing to disclose to them the letter they had received from the watcher prior to the sale. However, in 2017, A New Jersey judge dismissed the suit, stating that it could set an unreasonable precedent for what sellers must disclose. Meanwhile, some in the community wondered if the Broadduses weren't sending the letters to themselves in order to get out of a house they couldn't afford. The Broadduses made a brief attempt in 2016 to demolish their house and redevelop the lot. Their plans were rejected, but a final letter from the Watcher arrived, threatening them with retaliation if they harmed the house. Many residents were alarmed by the story. Some even accused the Broadduses of staging a hoax, which they denied. The Watcher house finally sold in 2019 after years on the market, with the Broadduses taking a $440,000 loss. Hey everyone! I just wanted to express how grateful I am that you took time out of your day to listen to my narration. This is Nikki of Twysted Mind, and I'd like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Salamat!